Julian, before we get into it,
I just want to say, right, before getting into it, we are certainly not innovative in cyber, guys, because we accepted the last slot.
see, no, you knew you're going to have the hardcore conference goers who are serious about cybercrime sticking around. Everyone else is missing out on this discussion. But, I mean, Julian, a lot of people know multi-choice. I mean, I don't think it needs much introduction. But is there something about the business that most people don't know, just as an icebreaker?
Listen, I think let's keep it cyber. We are inundated with a lot of cyber threats on a daily basis.
Okay.
Right, so you got to have your defenses up. And now joining a bigger, well, being a big fish, now joining another big fish, you're a giant, right?
Yeah.
So our defensives have certainly been tested, and yeah, we have stood up quite firm.
So you're going to get attacked in French now as well, not just in English.
Yeah. So we're all taking French lessons.
Okay, unbelievable. And then, Peter, you were telling me earlier on Lux Aviation. I mean, probably not. Maybe this room. I know you guys do private jets business. This looks like the kind of room who would know your business quite well. But for those people who might not know, maybe just give us a quick oversight as to what Lux Aviation looks after and does.
Yeah, so thanks for that. Not many people will know us, but if you have ever taken a flight at Lanseria, if you turn into the airport, there on the corner is one of our companies, Zakiyya C Aviation Group. So Lux Aviation Group itself, where I work at, we have many different companies all over the world, from Australia all the way to Mexico. And it's not just private plane charter. We have VIP terminals, drones, we have helicopter expeditions, yachts. We're also a data company itself. So maybe the name is a bit deceiving in itself. But yeah, so we do quite a lot. And yeah, we have quite a large contingent of IT individuals in South Africa itself.
All right, so two very different businesses. The one's entertainment television, the other one's logistics and premium travel and aviation. So Julian, if we kick off with you, your experience with managing these large-scale digital ecosystems, how do you integrate security into a fast-moving, innovative pipeline without slowing down product delivery? Because this is the big issue, right? You have to keep steering the ship whilst plugging more things onto the ship.
Yeah, so listen, it's certainly a paradox, right? Where security is always seen as slowing down innovation. So I can tell you, in managing large-scale ecosystems, be it media and entertainment, fintech built on AI engines or cloud-native platforms, to be honest with you, speed is oxygen. Markets move fast. Our customers moves even faster, right? But, and there is a but here, right? Oxygen that isn't contained can lead to a fire. And to be honest, I mean, from my point of view, I think it's a myth that digital transformation is slowed down by security. In reality, what I've seen from my experience is that unmanaged risk actually slows down that digital pipeline of development, okay? And I can tell you, working with development teams, right? Nothing derails product teams more than a critical vulnerability that gets surfaced right close to the launch of a major product, right? And that's where you have a whole lot of security engineers scrambling to patch systems. You've got developers trying to remediate, and all of a sudden, it's no secret, the security department is the least favorite department. So I have seen that, right? So just to build some context, why this is even more topical now when we're talking about product delivery and speed and agility is the increase in the rise of AI-assisted software development. So sitting in the conference, lots of talk about AI, lots of good that it's doing for us. And you can understand why our development and our product teams are adopting it, because they can do a lot more, right? They can ship workloads, they can do development across territories a lot faster. But there is a concern here. You know, some of the research has shown that a lot of these automated AI development tools can introduce malicious code, and in some instances as well, insecure dependencies automatically. So And the thing with AI code, right? If you essentially tell it what the outcome must be, and if in your system and your architecture you blocked part A, it's going to go to part B or then part C. But how do you actually oversee that is a concern, right? So back to your question, yes, innovation and velocity is really important. But at the same time, I think as an industry, as cyber professionals, and what we are advocating internally is you can introduce more vulnerabilities into your ecosystem, which can slow you down, right? And on this point, right, the fact that we've adopted this AI way of development, we've moved away from just, I'll say, single-digit deployments to hundreds of deployments. When you manage in big ecosystems such as fintech, OTT, streaming platforms, and I can tell you now that our current way of doing security will not suffice. The manual way of integrating into these digital pipelines will only slow down our product teams, and they will be frustrated. So Alex, yeah, I think the learning here is very simple, but it's not easy to actually implement, right? So the learning is that security should move away from being, I will say, a gatekeeper to actually being the engineering guardrails with a level of governance. Do you watch F1?
I do, yes, yeah.
Red Bull, Mercedes?
I'm trying to think if there's anyone I would bias here, but from my mother's side, I'd have to support Red Bull as a half Austrian.
Okay,
as a half
okay.
German, I have to support Toto Wolff. And then, just as a winner, McLaren, you have to give them some kudos at the moment.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right, well, we'll go with your first answer, Red Bull. So interesting enough, right? They've got the least amount of crashes in the last few years. So correlating this to F1, an F1 driver drives incredibly fast, right? But there's very few crashes because there's barriers, there's telemetry, there's constant monitoring, right? And yes, one can argue we can remove these barriers, we can remove the standards and the limitations, and these cars will go a lot faster, but that's going to be short-lived. Now, bringing that back to this digital pipeline of innovation, it's a very similar concept. We can take these guardrails out, but your teams, especially with the new tools that we introduce in, we are going to have more ill-defined innovations. And in my view, I think we're going to make the news for the wrong reasons if we don't have security embedded in how we go about software development specifically into the future, right? But what does that look like, right, practically? Yeah, what does that look like practically? Architecture, right? So you've got to have sound architectures from the onset, secure landing zones, identity-first architectures, etc. That's really good. I think of it when you're building a modern city and you zone in that infrastructure. Let your product teams leverage off that common foundation and infrastructure. That in itself would help the agility and the throughput of this digital product pipeline. Secondly is what I would like to call integrating, and it's a concept that has been spoken about, integrating security into the development cycle, right, into your CI and CD environment. Still very, very true and very relevant, the concepts of code as a policy, infrastructure as a policy, etc. But we've got to be disciplined at this, right? And we've got to be disciplined to the point where that if there is a ill-defined deployment, we stop that deployment because we don't want it downstream. A good example, yeah, if we are going to the cloud with a public cloud endpoint and there's a team that's made a mistake and there's an insecure connector or API, right? This pipeline must stop that deployment. There's an interesting stat, right, that greater than 90% of failed cloud deployments is as a consequence of user error on misconfiguration, and not so much on the OEM or the cloud provider. The third thing is what I'll call intelligent integration. So back to the F1 car, constant monitoring needs to be there. Look at your API posture, etc., your identity behavior. Okay, that's really important. Yeah, and I know there's a lot more that I can speak about this, right? But I will kind of pause there. With just the closing that I'll say here, whatever we do as a security team, there needs to be a level of common sense. What do I mean by that, right? If we're changing the button on an app to actually looking at customer data or changing a payment system, the level of security scrutiny needs to be proportional to the actual risk. Because we do not want, and I'm sure as security professionals, to be seen as a department of no. Because our product teams, and I've seen this, will work around us. So there needs to be a risk-tiered governance approach. Yeah.
Very valid. Peter, do you have a similar situation in the aviation space? I mean, I know maybe the risks are slightly different. I mean, with Julian, you'll have a whole bouquet of channels go down if worst case scenario. What does that look like for you, Peter, if this AI innovation integration doesn't play out the way it should?
Yeah, I mean, for us, obviously, passenger safety is like the number one thing. We cannot compromise on that, but just in the same breath, so is all of our customers that we serve. But yes, if we don't act responsibly, the consequences could be someone's life.
So how do you innovate in that space? How do you get on board the AI train and do what you need to do to stay up to speed?
Well, I think Julian said it, but there were some speakers that also said it, and I want to start maybe from the ground up and saying that we have a lot of cybersecurity individuals here, mainly. I find myself being in cyber and now being here building AI products. So I'm seeing it from a different perspective today than maybe you guys are seeing. But it starts with the fundamentals. I think anything in life, the fundamentals are your bread and butter. The one panelist was talking about zero trust. I don't know many companies that actually have implemented it successfully from the ground up. But I mean, getting back to the question, so we are in a cutthroat business, charter, aviation space. There's many brokers, many aviation companies, not that many jets. Same with helicopters, same with selling aviation data into an industry. And what has started as the charter teams or sales teams are enabling themselves, now it's IT enabling the business to sell, to go forward, to compete in a market. Now, when you bring that back to innovation, innovation in itself could be a lot of things. It could be companies here that roll out, we heard that some of the government entities will be rolling out certain projects, zero trust, whatever it is, something new that you introduce, something that you change that's material, some transformation, could be innovation within your company. Now for us, a few years ago we started an R&D team, and the sole mission of this team was to go and see where we can compete and basically annihilate the competition with better products that can give us the value proposition to put in front of the client to say, choose us through instead of someone else. Now, I was just saying to Julian, one of those is actually cybersecurity. That is a value proposition that you put forward. Especially with high net worth individuals, security is everything. You cannot compromise on it. Now that leads to the question where we are presenting them with their information on our products. They need to know that it is safe because it's highly confidential. Sometimes it's military related information. So we established a small team because a big team to do innovation is very difficult. You have to have, like Julian was saying, a lot of steps along the way, and the oxygen and the speed and all of these things mixed correctly. So for us, it looks a bit different. I run a team of 5 individuals, so to be expanded a little bit. But each one in the team is actually having security in their, like we were saying, at the front of their mind when they are developing, when they are doing everything, because they know their mission is for their product to get used. And if they skimp on security, it won't. And also, as you were saying, that one vulnerability could sink your company. So now we find ourselves in a place where we have to innovate and build these apps. And from my side, I was just also saying to someone there is, I've not heard today about people speaking about the security around AI agents. We've heard a lot about AI. So we work with AI agents. To give an example of innovation where you need to be very careful is we have, for an example, a chat on the back end. This chat helps the charter person or whoever to gather information, to schedule, to do all sorts of things. But that agent has got access to 10 other agents, and they are talking to each other. You need visibility, you need controls, you need soft controls, you need hard controls. Now, why am I saying this is you need to do that from the beginning. You need to make security part of your process when you are designing from the UX. It seems stupid, UX, but from the UX all the way down to the code. And the challenge is for us, being a small team, we've fallen into this trap of using AI to code. And we were very excited early on, and maybe this is something that you can take back to your entities and maybe explore that if you have development teams, is that our lead developer came to me and said, okay, this is very cool, but it's very scary. If the AI helps me build this thing, how am I expected to read 20,000 lines of code or 10,000 lines of code and put my stamp on this thing when I actually don't even know if it did the right thing? And then the other developer said, no, we'll get Claude AI code to check it because they've released the security thing now. Okay, but now we're talking about an even greater threat in supply chain attacks coming through AI. So it seems like no matter what we do, we have to stick to the fundamentals. Even when you're innovating, you still need to do the work yourself. You still need to check the work yourself, but that doesn't mean you can't move fast. If you in your company develop the methodology around the security, from the pipelines that you deploy, to the code that you write, to the testing that you need to do, absolute testing, you would be fine. So for us, we've built a lot of products safely in an ecosystem that we have designed, that we've signed off, that we use, that it doesn't have any of our customer data, but it's for like for like. And we can play with that and we can experiment it. As soon as it comes out of there, that's the rigorous part of, going through it. So there are ways, but the mindset is you need to have that mindset. And then lastly, today we heard a lot about leadership. It will take great leaders to take us safely through the future now. And that leader or those leaders and that board that is talking about these things will set the tone for how these things develop. And that leader and those boards will either bring this ship into the right place or probably onto the rocks. We've got to be very careful. But as so, we have a mandate from the business to go forward.
Yeah. And I mean, 20,000 lines of code is almost kind of coming back to what Mark was talking about with his hacking demonstration. How do you find that one line that could become a compromise if you have to go through 20,000 lines and then relying on another AI to pick up the other AI's issues? I mean, now you're really leaving it up to everyone but yourself to figure out.
Yeah, and also the last thing is you can say that you have security by design, and I will challenge that thought because I've seen we develop stuff security by design. But if your team doesn't have the experience, you are developing stuff that has never been done before. How do you secure that by design if you don't even know how it will exist? So security by design is doing the fundamentals right, but then what will happen afterwards? That's the question.
Julian, how do you measure and communicate the impact of cybersecurity investments and risk mitigation in environments? And I fear this will be becoming more and more of a thing as Canal Plus now takes over the business that prioritizes agility and fast-paced deployment. Because I'm sure there's a lot of fast-paced deployment that's going to be happening now.
No, definitely, Alex. And I think, if I look back at industry and many organizations, a lot of security professionals, when they are communicating to Exco and board, they communicate success in the terms of technical matrix, such as number of incidents investigated, number of vulnerabilities pulled down, number of tools deployed. Yes, those matrices are important when you are measuring and communicating, but it doesn't really speak to your executive committee or to a platform owner that's going to be contributing towards that cyber investment, right? A very common one that I've seen, when you're looking at the language is that we've reduced vulnerabilities by 35%. Okay, what does that mean to an Exco? Yes, you'll get a few nods of acknowledgements, you're doing your job as a cyber professional, but how is that adding value to my business? So when we are speaking and communicating, I think it's important to be intimate with our internal business stakeholders, right? So for example, if we are to look at this specific platform and just say it's our DSTV stream platform, and we say we actually reduce the probability of a major outage that would have impacted ad revenue and viewers. So that immediately, resonates with that platform owner, Another one that I've seen quite often as cyber professionals is we've improved our detection capability. As cyber guys, we always quite proud of this, right? But again, does that resonate? Does that speak to someone on the business side? It doesn't. But again, if we had to speak about that specific platform, maybe it's a payment platform, then you can tell them, you know what, guys, we've actually reduced the probability of customer data exposure, that we avoided regulatory penalties. So you speak into that regulatory team, you speak into the customer team in terms of protecting that customer data. So we change in the narrative from actually technical hygiene topics to talking about business, right? We're talking about revenue continuity, we're talking about customer trust and brand reputation. So these are really, really important concepts when you're in an organization that's just driving forward, right? But it's important to bring it back home to what's important as well with us being cyber professionals. I can tell you now, right, a lot of boards are expecting cyber professionals not to just talk about the controls you have in place, but how those controls are going to reduce real world risk to his or her business. Looking at some stats, right, cybercrime, global economy costs us 10 trillion US dollars. So it's not just an IT problem or a security problem. We need to bring it back home because we're talking about business resilience, right? So that's an important point. Last thing, I'll just touch about this, and it's not easily done, right? But as cyber professionals, we really need to change from technical reporting to enterprise storytelling. Okay, we need to be able to tell that story, and we need to talk alongside the innovation velocity in fast-moving environments. So very quickly, right? We all know we drive in a feature roadmaps. What enabled that feature roadmap from cyber teams was that we've adopted a shift left. We've got fewer production incidents, as an example. Another big one is we've increased we've reduced our lead times for our products because we've got more frequent deployments. What's the cyber measure for that? Is we've introduced automated scanning, and we've improved our turnaround time. So it's really talking alongside our business agility matrices, and that's how you can bridge that gap. And the moment you build confidence, then it becomes a measurable value from a cyber stance, right? Yeah. And I think the last point I want to raise here is that a lot of modern organizations now are moving to communicating financial risk associated with cyber incidents, right? Scenario planning, expected loss analysis, right? Because let's be honest, it's extremely difficult to celebrate a ransomware event that hasn't occurred. How do you measure the ROI? So we got to really formulate this. So I think those are the key points of how we communicate and how we measure going forward. Yeah.
I think it's such a valuable point. It's putting it in the language of the people that you're reporting into.
Yeah.
Because, you can so often get caught up, especially in an industry like this, in the jargon and in the likelihood of something happening. But if somebody sitting at a board level who's maybe from an accounting background or a marketing background doesn't understand what you're doing, it means nothing, right? It's sort of, it's there, but it's not.
We got to move away from our jargon that's within our teams. Yeah.
We've got just under 5 minutes left. Peter, I wanted to ask you, Julian looks after a business that's across Africa, Pan-African. I think there's a bit of spillover into a couple of other countries maybe. But you're looking after a business that has a global footprint as well. How do you leverage AI and your data strategy to identify and mitigate emerging cyber threats across the globe? And I'm assuming they're quite different in different territories. It's not the same franchise that's attacking you.
I will give a couple of examples where we are leveraging it, but we use external threat intelligence quite extensively. We use a platform called SOC Radar. Guys from Eastern Bloc, very good. We have a very close tab on every country that we operate in. Aviation, specifically that part of the business, is very targeted. Very lacking in security in terms of aircraft and software, etc. But as a global business, we also have a lot of regulatory stuff from all over the world. In terms of cyber criminals, from Australia all the way to America, we have to protect infrastructure. It's quite difficult doing that. We are very targeted. I'm more on the practical side of being on the front lines, which is sometimes scary. A simple case of where I'm a data scientist and an engineer, etc. So I think a lot of cybersecurity individuals will have to start upskilling themselves to get these skills, because you're going to need to be able to protect them, and you can only protect by knowing. So an example is what we are using in AI. We're on a Microsoft platform, so our SIEM is like Sentinel. We have an outsourced cybersecurity company that works with us. But now what we do is we have a lot of people moving all the time. We have at any time flights flying and pilots moving and cabin crew moving all over with mobile devices, etc. So one of the places where we leveraged AI, which Microsoft actually couldn't help us, Microsoft has got this thing, I'm sure all of you know, impossible travel. Somewhere you've seen this thing, and it basically means you can't be at two places at once. Now, we built our own custom models using our data and our aviation data to know that Alex is flying from Australia to maybe LA, etc. He's going to be traveling there. We expect him to log into the US at that time. He's flying a Global Express. Block time is the amount of time a full flight takes. We know that if we use Microsoft, we get false positives. So by using your own data and deploying that into a model that is custom to your business, and I think Dr. said that is, you have to look at your business, what is normal in your business, and then deploy that model to help you. And it could be as simple as a notebook, or, you can build these type of things. But we have deployed them because it was more based on the need of having less false positives and actually knowing where our staff is, so that when we do get attacked, your phishing attacks that you have, or even where they grab your token for your MFA, through those phishing portals. These things are all things that we deal with on a daily basis. So you got to set up AI, machine learning models, not general language models, machine learning models that take your data and create a base normal for your organization. And when you do that, you're able to see. So I'll end off with this thing. I think there are a lot of perspectives, and all of us have them. Our approach is a bit different. We know we're not going to stop everything, but we can make sure that we see everything. So we make sure that we at all times can see all of the data points that is happening, so that if there's anomaly, if we need to look at something, we have that information at hand and can act. And this is truly where machine learning and AI can shine within your organization. It's closed. You can host it in your own cloud. You don't need to worry about external things and so on. So that's an example of where we are doing it.
Tremendous. Well, some great takeouts there. Continue innovating, even though you don't want to compromise the security. Also interesting, applying models that are relevant to your industry, not any other industry. Make it work in your space. I hope you've taken some insights out of that. Gentlemen, Julian, Zakiyya, thank you so much for joining us, and also Peter Steyn. It's been great having you on the stage, and let's give them a big round of applause on this. Thank you.